Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 million of the Protein Bites podcast. I am your host, Adriano Rizzo. I own and operate a small personal training studio in the Sutherland Shire called Riz Fitness. It would mean a lot to me if you went ahead and followed that page, if you are looking for a personal trainer at all. Outside of that, the purpose of this podcast is to help people learn things a little bit smarter and not have to do things the hard way when it comes to exercise, health, and fitness, essentially cutting out all the bullshit. So without further ado, we are going to talk about a couple of things today. Happy New Year, firstly. Welcome to 2023. I know I am pumped as December is a really more or less the shittest month for fitness business owners. Doesn't have to be, but by and large, I can speak for the community when I say we'd rather not have to go through business-wise, at least go through December. So we got through that hard part. January is upon us. A lot of people think that you get the New Year's resolutions people coming through. We don't. Typically, people aren't ready to start on the first. Like New Year, new me, but you've just got a bunch of people who talk shit and don't actually act on it. So there's a lot of that. But most people are like on holidays until like halfway through end of Jan. So it really just depends on all that sort of stuff, really. So yeah. Anyway, straight to the podcast. We're going to talk about whether or not TikTok trends or Instagram Reels are killing your gains and some real life experience about that. And then I want to talk about protein, when to have it, how much to have, why it's important, the effects it has on your body, and all the rest. So let's get to it. TikTok trends. So what this sort of like refers to is like the broader, if you want to call it the fitness industry. I don't think I think personal training, what I do, and gyms and like F45s, that sort of stuff is like the fitness industry. I don't think social media people should be considered fitness industry. I don't think they. I think anybody can technically be like a fitness influencer. You don't have to have a personal training certificate. And I think you should have one if you do want to influence people's health decisions, that sort of stuff. I think you should have some level of education before we get told that that's our industry, right? But be that as it may, you've got some people inspiring or changing the course of their educational direction moving forward. So what that means is you have people who aren't educated with big Instagram followings and good bodies influencing people on who aren't educated either on what choices to make, what things to do with regard to their health and fitness. Okay? So do I think that that's a bad thing? Yes, absolutely. And what that can kind of look like is, I mean, let's say if you're someone with a six-pack or like you're a girl with a really big bum and a small waist, typically off the bat, people buy people. Let's say if I was a really overweight personal trainer, which I'm not, but if I was, I really wouldn't expect people to want to buy from me because you can't show, you're not showing the person that's interested in your service that you're capable of doing the things that you're telling them to do. So it's like essentially like you're not selling I guess you're selling a dream in a weird way, but you're selling a possibility. Maybe you're selling a chance they could have their lifestyle on check, work, and stay in shape. Whereas if you're someone that's really overweight, it'd be pretty hard to sell that because it's like, well, you're obviously not practicing what you're preaching. So one, you don't care, etc. So TikTok trends are really dangerous in that way because it can be kind of like misguiding. So like people will 90% buy who you are firstly. That'll get like the foot in the door, and then like your sales procedure, results that you've gotten for other people will kind of help persuade somebody to want to buy into what it is that you're doing. And then like barrier of entry as well is probably going to be like a huge one. Like, so the barrier of entry, like for me, I charge for my programs. You can't just come in and have a suss at what we do and then fuck off, right? Like you can on Instagram. This stuff's free because like you're the product, right? So they'll show you what exercises they're doing in order to garner attention. So let's say I had a client of mine, Rachel, lovely lady, been almost a client for over a year now, I think. And she's a massive fan of TikTok, loves it. And is always constantly asking me if we can do these weird fucking dumbass workouts. And I'm not calling her a dumbass when I say the dumbass workouts, but as a professional, I know what's a good workout and what's not. Or what's a good exercise and what's not. But she's constantly asking me, like, can we do this fucking stupid thing? Can we do this fucking stupid thing? I'm like, no, dude. Like, we do the stuff that we do because that's the best. But she sees someone with, like, a shredded six-pack and her brain, that to her makes more sense than Coach Man knows what he's talking about sometimes, right? She always listens to me to an extent, and trusts me, which is great. But there's also that, curiosity, or what if Coach Man doesn't know? And so what that tends to mean is that most people think that as well. Okay, most people will think that if she's even paying for a service, she's paying to see me on a weekly basis. If she's paying to see me, she trusts me. But then still there's that level of like, well, maybe TikTok guys know something we don't know. It's dangerous. And so what if she wasn't being guided, she wasn't being coached by myself, what would that look like? Well, it would probably look like her doing heaps of dumb exercises back and forth, like just program hopping, what we call in our industry program hopping, and not getting any results. And that is quite literally like the worst thing you can do, because you're training 4 or 5 times a week. You believe you're putting in the effort, and then you're getting no result to speak of. And that is probably the worst thing. Whereas for me and my girls, I always encourage, hey, we probably should work out the least amount to get the most out of your training. It's kind of how it lies. So yeah, it just depends on the person, but I just feel like overarchingly, like those TikTok videos or like real videos, one, the level of difficulty is like quite hard. Like they'll get you like do an ab rollout thing, which is just so dumb. Like that's not a practical exercise to do. However, you can squat 100 kilos, that's pretty practical. If you can leg press 200 kilos, that's pretty practical. But doing an ab rollout, that's not going to help. That's not going to have a high degree of transference into your life. It's not going to help you like carry groceries or walk upstairs without being out of breath, So I think a lot of people like that. It's attractive. It's like sexy. Hence why it gets a lot of views, because you've got someone with a six-pack or someone with a fat ass doing some weird like donkey kickback thing that doesn't work to grow your glutes at all. Guys, just please keep in mind that glute kickbacks aren't the most effective exercise to use if you want to grow your glutes. Just saying. But yeah, you'll see a lot of people doing that and misguiding people because they have a fat bum. But what they did to get there isn't what they're doing to keep it. Does that make sense? Like, just because somebody's showing you an exercise, it's just because they have no content to make up. So they'll just make up some dumb exercise or see some exercise, remake it themselves, and then put it out to you guys, to the public. But that's not what got them there. So I think that's what's dangerous about this whole TikTok sort of scenario, is you're seeing people with no qualifications, or if they do have qualifications, they're just trying to make their content look interesting, and they can't make their own content interesting because all they have is a six-pack and they've no charisma. And then, or maybe they've got some charisma, but like not much depth maybe perhaps to their character or who they are. And so they can't really sell, the actual process. And unfortunately with personal trainers, like we've got to combat that. So we have to then sell you on the longer term, hey, it's going to take you 6 to 12 months. Hey, you're going to be doing the same exercises, but what you need to get better at is actually tracking those exercises so you get stronger, so you feel better about yourself as a metric. As your strength goes up, you'll feel better about what you're doing here, and so on and so forth. So it's just a little bit of that sort of stuff. That's kind of how our industry works. We see that's top of the like sort of funnel, super sexy, super appealing exercises, good looking people exercising, misguiding you guys because you guys have no education either. And then like us personal trainers, we have to like pretty much temper that and drop down your expectation of how it actually works, and put some context to it and say, hey, this is how you're going to achieve X result in X time because of X, Y, Z. Cool. Hope that kind of makes sense. I know I sort of speak broadly, but I hope I sort of reeled it in for you guys. Yeah. So we're going to talk about protein next. So protein's a fascinating one. A lot of people don't understand it. So there's a couple of things that most people don't understand. So most people think insulin, well, not most people, but a lot of people think that insulin release causes fat gain and that sort of stuff, which it doesn't. If you're insulin resistant, it just means that you've probably eaten like a fat fuck and not cared about yourself and just completely railroaded your health and well-being for numerous amounts of years. So your blood sugar just spikes all the time. And so your insulin secretion isn't as high as what it could be because you've just been abusing your body's systems because you've been overeating heavy carb or heavy protein-based food, but probably heavy carb-based food because that's the easiest one to get. I'm going to assume that everyone that's really overweight isn't like constantly overeating steak. But what happens is when you have carbohydrates or sugary processed food, that shit hits your system really, really fast if it's processed. That releases insulin, and that insulin release helps shuttle those nutrients to where it needs to go in the body. And so what most people believe is that insulin then is the bad guy and not the calories they've eaten, right? So it's really important to contextualize that sort of stuff, okay? Outside of that, what's really important as well is understanding that protein actually will elicit a release as well. So protein will actually elicit a insulin secretion. So whether you're eating carbs or protein, you are going to get some insulin release. So people don't even understand that. And so they'll tell you, eat a keto, insulin's bad. And it's like, well, no, dickhead. Actually, protein will insulin will get released, secreted if you eat carbs or not. Okay. And then what most people don't understand as well is that when you're eating heavy protein based foods, I've got to actually, let me just try and get this up for a second. So I want to protein to carbs word. Processed protein to carbs. Gluconeogenesis. So if you consume too much protein, then this can be converted to glucose by a process called gluconeogenesis. The conversion of protein to glucose occurs as a result of the hormone glucagon, which prevents low blood sugar and isn't a bad thing unless you are over-consuming protein. Right. So your body has a natural process in which it will convert protein to carbs, to sugar in your bloodstream. So regardless of whatever the fuck you want, it's a really stupid idea to cut out the carbs because you're having carbs anyway. Most people don't get that. All right. You're actually having carbohydrates. Like it's getting in there somehow. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of that. And so they make silly choices. Like they need to do a keto diet. They need to do X-dumb diet. And it just doesn't work. It just makes no sense whatsoever. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news or bring that to light for you. But that's what happens in the body. And it's a good thing because that means you can eat carbs again. Yay. You just have to be accountable for it. Boo. Okay. So best timing for protein, best sources of protein. Now, you can have your plant-based sources, beans, legumes, all that sort of shit. But there's a thing called, sorry, what the fuck is difference? There's a thing called, what the fuck's it called? You've got essential amino acids, right? And they're amino acids that your body can't create. Because your body can create some amino acids, but there's essential ones that your body can't create. Now, each protein source has a certain ratio of those essential amino acids. So let's say steak has like X amino acid to 75%, and then it's made up of 10% the other amino acid, and da-da-da-da-da. Like I think it's like 9 or 11 essential amino acids, something like that. And so your body will actually grab those little fellas from the food that you're eating and then redistribute it as muscle or wherever it needs to go. And so typically, I believe, I forgot what the main, what's it called? What's the main amino acid that is responsible for muscle building? Anyway, there's one out there. It's not really that important, but that tends to occur at a higher degree in meats, like in animal-based sources. And then your plant-based sources tend to have a lower amount of that amino acid and a poorer amino acid profile. You know what I mean? So that's why it can sort of impact your food and that sort of stuff. That's why it can impact some people believe like your results and stuff. So a poor amino acid profile in plant-based options, a better one in meat-based options. Now, your plant-based friends will argue that it's the same, doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree. I used to agree, now I don't, based on just like understanding human nature and the availability of protein-based foods everywhere you go as a meat eater versus a plant eater. So yeah, just the acknowledgement of that. Anyway, so the best protein sources you can get, you're probably looking at like steak, chicken, eggs, in no particular order. Fish is great, I believe, just because like I think it's very easy to digest. A lot of people believe the same thing, but that's purely anecdotal. I have no evidence to support that theory whatsoever. I just know that seafood, a lot of people don't complain about it's feeling heavy in your stomach. So yeah, those are my like preferred sources. Now, a lot of people think that there's a timing based issue with protein. There's not really. There's not really. It just kind of depends on what sort of how much protein you're getting overall in a day. So athletic populations, what tends to be is we get a lot of research done on athletic populations, and then your athletes look the best, tend to be like coaches or whatever the fuck, and then that information will trickle down, and I think it gets diluted by the time it gets to the general population. So what I think should typically happen if you're someone that is a general population person looking to recover, you should worry about getting in 2.2 or just say 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So let's say we've got a 100-gram steak. That'll have 20 grams of protein in it, raw. 100 grams chicken breast, about 20 grams of protein in it, raw. Fish, about the same, etc., etc. 2 eggs has about 10 grams of protein in it. A Chobani yogurt has about 14 grams. Things like that. So out of those, you're going to need to compile a way of eating that you like that is more likely to make you hit 140 grams of protein a day as opposed to not. So, if you're a 60 kilogram woman, you need 120 grams of protein per day. If you're a 90 kilogram man, you need 180 grams of protein per day. Now, you can do shakes. You can do literally anything you want as you go along. Just depends on what's going on for you. There's all that sort of stuff, all those options available for you. I'd recommend having everything. Probably, let's say if you're like a 60 kilogram woman, I'd recommend having 30 grams of protein 4 times a day. One of those servings post-workout within an hour window would be a good idea. Having protein pre-bed 2 hours before bed at a maximum, at a minute, maximum would be a good idea. And breakfast having probably like 30 to 40, and then snacks having somewhere like 30 to 40 grams in there. And that's going to be an easy way to do it. Like 30 grams of protein is 2 Chobani yogurts. Pretty easy to eat those, right? And then 30 grams of protein is like a scoop of protein powder. So there's 2 done, and then you just have to worry about 2 main meals, and you're good. So it just depends on how you want to put it together, but that's a really, really good way of eating, and that'll help you get the best results with the training you're doing. If you're not training, I still recommend that, just for body composition, because it tends to be that, if you eat high in protein, you're giving your body what it needs to recover, whereas if you're eating higher in carbs and switching out the protein, you're just not, and you can see the body types that's reflected in. People who have high protein diets, even if they're skinnier or leaner, they'll look more muscular for sure. There's no real best time for general pop. Look, as frequent and as regular as you can have it, and break it down into probably like 4 even portions would be a really good idea. Okay, that's kind of where we're at. So you have 200 grams of protein you need a day, then have 50, 50, 50, 50. You can even have 60, 40, 60, 40 if that's what you want. However, but like I'd recommend over 30 grams per serve. And then no more than probably like 60 grams per serve or 70 grams, because it seems like that's kind of the best way that your body can digest it. In terms of like availability of protein, you're still going to get most of it, I believe. But if we're splitting hairs, they think that it's best to have small amounts of protein split up throughout the day, they think. But I just don't really. I see it's very negligible, the results you're going to get. So that's pretty much the protein conversation. Meat or plant animal-based sources are the best. Then probably like your protein powder-based sources. Protein powder. Then probably like your plant-based sources. Split it up into 4 meals in a day. One of those meals can be snacks throughout the day as well. So you just have to worry about 3 meals hitting 60% or 70% of your protein goals for the day, which is pretty easy. And then have one of those meals with a high amount of protein after. So post-workout, probably like an hour minimum, max, hour minimum. Have some protein before bed, but like have it 2 hours max before bed. You don't want to have it an hour and a half, 2 hours close to bed because it'll fuck with your sleep. So those are the main considerations. Protein still produces insulin or initiates the secretion of insulin. Protein is the building blocks of all our muscles. You should have about 2 grams per day per kilogram of body weight. Okay. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. My name's Adriano. This is the Protein Bites Podcast. And to all my 5 listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. If you find any value of this podcast at all, shoot this over to your friends and family if they need it, because that's how this podcast is going to grow. It's not going to grow without your support otherwise. Like it on Spotify, rate it, do all the cool shit, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Thank you.